Welcome to MyShlaich Story Hour Chassidim series. Now, Shluchim, Chassidus is something that gives vitality, gives chayas in our Avodas Hashem. Right? It's or v'chayas nafshenu, it's the life and light that you can go through life and you can be Mekayim Shulchan Aruch, you can do everything exact, but sometimes it can be lacking a feeling, a gefühlen, a geschmack. And Chassidus brings that life, brings that excitement. In the summer of Tov Kuf Mem Hey, which would be 1785, two Talmidei HaMagid, Reb Shlomo Karliner and Reb Zitomer, came to the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe told them that the best way to stop the Machlekes and the opposition from the Misnagdim was not by, sitting quietly and ignoring it, or just hiding or stopping to teach Chassidus, but rather to go around and teach even more Chassidus. Even now, the Rebbe teaches us that when Chas v'Shalom somebody tries to stop us from doing something right, the best way to fight it is by adding and doing even more. And so, after the visitors left, the Alter Rebbe told his brother, the Maharil, to send a group of Jungelite from Cheder Beis, like we explained earlier in the previous episode, what the three Chadorim were, to go visit various different towns in Lithuania, to teach Chassidus. And of course, one of the people that were sent was Reb Pinchos Raizes. Each one of these Talmidim that were sent from the Alter Rebbe were supposed to spend 2 months in a specific town, and they would go around and they would teach Chassidus, and they would encourage the people in the towns to come closer to the ways of Chassidus. And so, after the first year, a lot of people from all over Lithuania, made their way to Liozna to start learning by the Alter Rebbe. And this operation began to work. The first group of people that were sent out from the Alter Rebbe, from Cheder Beis, to go teach Chassidus in all these Misnagdish Shtetl, ended up bringing back many people from the Misnagdish communities to become Chassidim. And these weren't regular people. These were the cream of the crop, the G'delim, the big Talmidei Chachamim. And they realized the warmth and the beauty and the Geschmack and the Tifkeit of Teres Chassidus Chabad. The following year, even more Talmidim were sent to other cities. And again, Baruch Hashem, their mission, their shlichus was met with very big success. Now, Reb Pinchos, by this point, was already a chassid of the Alter Rebbe for a few years. And he noticed that while the chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, and Bechlal, even today, the chassidim of any Rebbe, we live with every word, we hang on to every word that the Rebbe says, at that time, very little of what the Alter Rebbe was saying was actually being written down and preserved for future generations. We know, Take, a lot of the early Maimorim, and the Vertlach, and the Pisgamim from the Alter Rebbe's early years, but that which we know, Kindalach, is only a fraction of what the Alter Rebbe actually taught. The same is true with the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid. What we have from their Torah is mamish, a drop in the bucket of what was available in those days. And one could say the reason for this is actually illustrated in the following story. The Alter Rebbe had a friend who was also one of the Talmidei HaMagid. He was known as the Volper. He was a very, very big Talmid Chacham, a very, very special person, a big chassid. There was a certain point that only him and the Alter Rebbe were able to stand and understand and adhere the Torah, the teachings of the Magid. Can you imagine somebody being at a similar level or pretty close to the Alter Rebbe when it comes to understanding the Torah HaMagid? However, for whatever reason, after the Magid passed away, the Volper didn't go on to start a Chassidic dynasty to become a Rebbe like everybody else. He ended up drinking a lot of mashke. I understand that he was homeless, ended up traveling from town to town, and he didn't give off the appearance necessarily as a big Talmid of the Magid. But those people that were in the inside, those people that actually knew him, and they would come across him, and they would see after he took a few cups of l'chaim, and he would start muttering, he would start speaking, they would come close and listen, and they would hear deep teachings of Chassidus that the Volper was chazering over that he heard from the Magid. The story goes that one time the Volper was in Liozne and he came into the shul of the Alter Rebbe where the Alter Rebbe was giving his shir. And there were a few Talmidim of the Alter Rebbe that recognized the Volper. And they weren't sure what to do. Should they tell the Alter Rebbe? Should they stop the shir? Or should they wait till the end? He sat in the back for a while. He listened to the shir. And he commented to those Talmidim. He said, you know, the Alter Rebbe and I, wir haben beide gegessen von derselbe Teller. We ate both from the same plate. Referring to sitting and learning by the Magid. Aber hat genommen die Gedichte. He took the best, the most geschmacke part, saying about the Alter Rebbe that the Alter Rebbe took the best parts of the teachings of the Magid. And then the Volper got up and he left. The Alter Rebbe finished the shir, and the Talmidim went over to the Alter Rebbe and told the Alter Rebbe that the Volper was here. So the Alter Rebbe said, please go call him back. They ran out to try to find him and they weren't able to catch him. And the Alter Rebbe said, had you told me he was here, I would have been able to hopefully have cured him and bring him back, restored him to his original glory. Why do I mention the Volper? Because the Chassidim began to realize, began to hear, and began to know how special this person was. And if a Chassid was in a krechma somewhere, and they would see somebody that resembled the Volper, they would wait for him to say a little bit of L'chaim and wait for him to start saying Chassidus, and they would put their ear next to him, and they would be able to hear things from the Maggid that they never heard from anybody else before. On one such occasion, there was a Chassid in a krechma, and he spotted the Volper was there. And the Volper was downstairs, I guess, in the common area where everybody was saying L'chaim and drinking and having some mashke. And he waited for the Volper to become tif farshikert. And this Chosid of the Alter Rebbe made his way upstairs into the room where the Volper was staying. What was he doing over there? He wanted to do what some people call Chassidishe Geneva. Now, there's nothing Chassidish about a Geneva. I want to just put that out there. He wanted to see, maybe the Volper has in his possession a zettel, a note, a manuscript, something written down from the Torah of the Magid, or of the Baal Shem Tov, or a Ksav Yad, or something that the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe don't have. And so he picks the lock, he goes into the room, he opens his suitcase, he starts rummaging through his clothes and his socks and his shirts, under the bed and in his bag and around his tefillin. He's, making a mess over there, trying to discreetly find if there's a zettel, something, a note or a manuscript of the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, or the Magid. He doesn't find anything. But while he's involved in his investigation, flipping things around, the door opens. And the Volper walks in and he catches the Chosid red-handed going through his bags. Rabbi say, before we continue the story, it's very, very important information. You're listening? Herzu a minute. Listen up. Coming up very, very soon. By very soon, I mean Parshas Truma, Shabbos Parshas Tetzaveh. We got amazing, amazing Shabbaton. Shabbos Tzazamen. You remember last year's Shabbos Tzazamen? You think last year was good? This is going to be even better. You got to go online. Have your parents sign you up for the Shabbos Tzazamen Shabbaton. For boys, it's going to be Shabbos Parshas Truma Lamed Shvat, February 28th. And for the girls, it's Shabbos Parshas Tetzaveh, Zayin Adar, or March 7th. If you see that there's no Shabbos Tzazamen in your area to go to, you know what you got to do? Be the pioneer. Say, Ma, Ta, we got to make the Shabbos Tzazamen by us. What do you get by having a Shabbos Tzazamen by you? First of all, everybody comes to you, you get the Fabring together, and the host gets an awesome Shabbaton in a box. What Shabbaton in a box is? Crazy merch, games, yard signs, everything under the sun to make this Shabbos awesome, amazing, to Fabring with your fellow Shluchim and Shluchis. So make sure you go online and sign up, MyShlaich.com/Tzazamen. And now, back to the story. The door opens, and the Volper walks in, and he catches the Chosid red-handed. And the Volper looks at him. He says, well, what do you want from me? Did I steal something from you? What are you going through my bags for? And the Chosid says, no, I'm not. You didn't steal anything from me. But I'm looking, maybe you have a zettel, a manuscript, a Ksav Yad, a writing of the Torah of the Magid, or maybe something from the Alter Rebbe that the Alter Rebbe said before we became Talmidim of the Alter Rebbe. Maybe you have something that you could share with me. And the Volper looks at him and says, ay, When we were Talmidim of the Magid, you know what we focused to do? We tried to inscribe the teachings of the Magid on our hearts. We didn't need a paper. We didn't need a notebook. We took what the Magid was teaching us and we wrote it into our head and into our heart and onto our neshama, and it became a part of us wherever we went. And nowadays, you Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, you will suffice. For you, it's good enough if I have a zettel, if I have a writing, just putting the words down on the paper, for you that's good enough. We didn't have papers in those days. We didn't carry around notebooks in those days. We took it and we lived with it. Side note, Kindalach, that's also a very important lesson for us. True, the Rebbe tells us we have to have bayis mali svarim. And it's important that we try to get another Sefer Chassidus and another Sefer of the Rebbe and another video of the Rebbe and another recording and another Ksav Yad, and all these things are important. But it's not enough to have everything in the books and have everything on the shelf. It has to be in us, in our head and in our heart and in our neshama. It has to become a part of us and to live with it. But the point the Volper was saying was we didn't write things down. We didn't have to write things down because we lived with it and it was a part of us. And Reb Pinchos Raizes realized that this was the mentality of the Chassidim of the Magid and the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, that they didn't write anything down. However, when Reb Pinchos saw that the Rebbe's words are pearls of wisdom and they inspire thousands of people to serve Hashem with so much kayach and so much excitement and so much enthusiasm, Reb Pinchos envisioned how much more could be accomplished if the words of the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, and especially the words of the Alter Rebbe, were to be written down, and the teachings of Chassidus would be put in print, and so many more people would have access to it. And so, Reb Pinchos Raizes decided he's going to start writing down the Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe exactly how he heard it. Not only that, but Reb Pinchos went to the Alter Chassidim and he asked them for the Maimorim that the Alter Rebbe said before Reb Pinchos became a Chassid. And this became Reb Pinchos Raizes' obsession. He wanted to document and write down as much Chassidus as he can. He also began writing down stories of the Baal Shem Tov and of the Magid. Later, the Mittler Rebbe went to Reb Pinchos and asked Reb Pinchos Raizes to teach him the Maimorim of his father, the Alter Rebbe. Even some of the Maimorim that Reb Pinchos wrote down or Reb Pinchos heard from the Alter Rebbe before the Mittler Rebbe was even born. Reb Pinchos basically became the first person to print Chassidus, or to make Chassidus accessible to the masses. Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe. Later, when the Tzemach Tzedek was putting together the Likutei Torah from thousands of Maimorim that the Alter Rebbe said, the notes, the Tzetlach, the writings of Reb Pinchos Raizes was a big part of the source of Likutei Torah. Sometimes, when Reb Pinchos Raizes was writing a Maimer, there were certain words that the Alter Rebbe was saying that he couldn't hear. He would leave a space in the notebook because he wanted to have everything exactly the way it was. Reb Pinchos understood the need to preserve the teachings and the sayings of the Alter Rebbe and share them with other people. And he would say that if a person who has pearls is careful not to lose even one, so too the words of the Alter Rebbe. They're pearls of the utmost wisdom, and they have to be taken care of with the utmost care to make sure not even one gets lost, not even one word. Now, Kindalach, it's known that sometimes when the Alter Rebbe was saying a Maimer, the Alter Rebbe would be overcome with such emotion that his voice would become so low that you wouldn't even be able to hear it. And Reb Pinchos would bend over and come as close to the Alter Rebbe so he can get those words that the Alter Rebbe was saying. Now, the reason why the Alter Rebbe would get so excited while saying a Maimer, be overcome with such emotion that sometimes you weren't able to hear it, is because when a Rebbe says a Maimer is known as Divrei Elikim Chayim, the words of Hashem. It's Shechina medaberes mitoich groinai. The Shechina is speaking through the words of the Rebbe that's saying a Maimer. That's why, before a Rebbe says a Maimer, Chassidim prepare by singing a special niggin, and everybody stands up. And if you'll notice, on the videos of our Rebbe saying a Maimer, the Rebbe ties a nos tichel, a handkerchief, around his hands, around his fingers, and the Rebbe is holding on to the tishtach, or holding on to the table. Like in a way, grounding himself here in Olam Hazeh. Because a Maimer is literally an expression of Alikus. Sometimes the Alter Rebbe would ask Reb Pinchos to tell him what he said in the Maimer. Because Reb Pinchos would sometimes repeat the Maimer back to the Alter Rebbe to make sure that he got every word correctly. One time in Tafshin Yud Gimel, the Rebbe one time asked to hear a tape of the Maimer that our Rebbe said by that Maimer, because the Rebbe says this is the Shechina speaking. I heard once a story that somebody was in Yechidus once, and he told the Rebbe that he's doing a certain thing, I forgot whatever it was. And the Rebbe says, why are you doing that? So the Chassid said, the Rebbe, because last time I spoke to the Rebbe about this is what the Rebbe told me to do. And the Rebbe said, if this is what I said, then that's what you have to do. Meaning, if the Rebbe says something, it's not that the Rebbe decided to say something on his own, that the Rebbe himself thinks it's a good idea. The Rebbe is our conduit, is our connection between us and the Rebbe. So the Rebbe is bringing down the message that the Rebbe wants us to hear. So sometimes when the Alter Rebbe asks Reb Pinchos to repeat back to him the Maimer, is because the Alter Rebbe wants to hear what was the Maimer, what was the message that he delivered. And not only that, the stories we know of the Alter Rebbe's first few discussions with the big Talmidei Chachamim of Shklov are all thanks to Reb Pinchos. The inspiring story of how one Simchas Torah the Alter Rebbe cured hundreds of Chassidim who had fallen ill, and some of them very seriously ill, that's also taken from Reb Pinchos' notes. I want to just also mention one more example that happened in Tovkuf Samach Vav, which would be 1806, that could point out the high regard in which the Alter Rebbe held Reb Pinchos. The Tzemach Tzedek, who was only 17 at the time of the story, was already writing his own original thoughts on Chassidus. Can you imagine that? The Alter Rebbe instructed his granddaughter, Rebbetzin Chaim Mushke, the wife of the Tzemach Tzedek, to bring the Alter Rebbe some of the Kisvei Yad of the Tzemach Tzedek. Not knowing which ones to bring, Rebbetzin Chaim Mushke brought a large notebook which contained the Tzemach Tzedek's Maimer with the Dibra Maschil, Sheirish Mitzvah Tefillah. The Alter Rebbe enjoyed the Maimer very much, and he called in his brother the Maharil, or Reb Yehuda Leib, and Reb Pinchos, saying that he was going to say the bracha of Shechianu. And he wanted both the Maharil and Reb Pinchos to answer Amen, because the Torah states that a fact is established based on the edus of two people. The Alter Rebbe explained that he had just seen the Kisvei Yad of his Einugol, the Tzemach Tzedek, and these Kisvei Yad demonstrated that Teres Chassidus and Halacha were continuing to the third generation. You have the Alter Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe, and then the Tzemach Tzedek. The Alter Rebbe then quoted the pasuk that says that once the Torah is established for 3 generations, it will remain forever. Now the Teres Chassidus Chabad had already a third Rebbe that was saying Maimarim. We know that Teres Chassidus Chabad is going to last forever. The Alter Rebbe stood up and said the bracha of Shechianu b'Shem u'Malchus with Hashem's name. And then Reb Pinchos and the Maharil both answered Amen. That year, the Mittel Rebbe's daughter, Rebbetzin Dveira Leah, married Rebbe Kuzil Zalman, the Einukul of Levi Yitzchak Berditchev. The Chasna took place in the city of Zlobin, which was referred to as the Great Chasana. And I think we spoke about the Zlobin Chasana in the Shmuel Munkes series. In his invitation to the Pinchas, the Mittel Rebbe writes, "Come, and I will reveal to you the secrets that were hidden until now." The Frierdiker Rebbe writes that both the Alter Rebbe and the Mittel Rebbe were megala many say this only to the Pinchos Raizes. From these few incidents, these few points that we just spoke about in this episode, we see that Reb Pinchos was a Chosid who was included in the Rabbeim's family in times of happiness and joy, as well as during times of seriousness. Undoubtedly, Reb Pinchos is an example of a true Chosid who is totally devoted to the Rabbeim and spreads and teaches the Teres Chassidus and the greatness of the Rabbeim to others. Notwithstanding all this, Reb Pinchos still remained a very humble person.